Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's webinar presented by Steam Powered Consulting. And this week, we're going to look at the 7 steps to achieve maximum profit in your business. And we're also going to move on to talk about how you can maximize the exit value of your business. So, first question. People always want to know, well, how do I get to that? Well, there's a question that you need to ask before that. And let me give you an example here. If you ask me, how do I get to Austin, Texas, where I am, I'd say, okay, well, let's head across the I-10 for a couple of hours, and then we'll turn north to head into Austin. And from where I am from Houston, that's a perfectly sensible answer. If, however, I was in Dallas and I told that person, well, head along the I-10 for a couple of hours and turn north, they would look at me as if I had 2 heads, because the I-10 is nowhere near Dallas. It's not where they're at. It's not where they're starting from. And possibly even worse would be if that person was in San Antonio and I gave them the advice to go west for a couple of hours on the I-10 and turn north. That might make some sense because the I-10 does run through San Antonio, but they're going to get nowhere near Austin. They're going to end up somewhere in San Angelo. So before you can say, how do I get there? The first thing you need to understand is, where are you at? And that's what many, many business owners don't get right in the first place. They don't know where they are on their entrepreneurial journey. And so they try and implement strategies and tactics that are not right for them at the time. And let me explain this a bit more. Most of us were not taught entrepreneurship at school. We got in, either we left the corporate world, we had an idea, we became business owners by accident, and we don't have that long-term plan, that long-term vision. And so we don't really know where we are on the roadmap, so we know which processes and procedures that we should be following. So there's research been done, and there's now, in general terms, people agree there are 7 main stages of entrepreneurship: prototyping, implementing the growth engine, systematization, pay up, providing an advisory board, M&A growth, and exit. And these are all perfectly valid steps, depending on where you are in the journey. So let's just look at this in a bit more detail so we can see where we are. And I'll explain where most small businesses end up. And so we can then identify the appropriate strategies that we need to be implementing for maximum profit and maximum value. So this is what the entrepreneur's journey actually looks like. We start off in the early stage, we're tinkering around, we have an idea, and then we start to get a bit of traction. Then as we make some sales, as we get moving, we get momentum, and eventually we grow so that we're in the expansion phase. Then in all businesses, there's a flatline period. And the business owner has 2 choices at this point. The first one is that they do what they've always done, and they look to sell more of what they've got. They look to do the same thing, but do it faster, cheaper, more aggressively, whatever. But ultimately, they slide down this death spiral. So they become a legacy business, a zombie, and eventually the business dies. The alternative, which is the one that we all want to achieve if we're going to sustain our business, is to achieve a breakout. And if we can get to this breakout, then we release the real high value that's in our business. And at each stage in this journey, there are specific strategies and tactics that we can implement to make sure that we end up in the breakout path and not end up in the death spiral. And these would include prototyping. I'm assuming everybody's past that stage. You have a business, you're not toying around looking for something to bring to market. You're already in operation. So going from prototyping, to get that momentum, we need to implement a predictable growth engine. And this is probably the most important single strategy in anything you do. It's going to occur several times in our entrepreneurial journey. Once we've got a predictable growth engine and we're now bringing in leads and sales in a manageable and predictable manner, we need to systematize the business. And this is where we have our business operating procedures, we have our business processes, we have KPI metrics, and there's a good reason for that, and I'll talk about that later in the presentation. But at the moment, we don't have a sellable business. Until we have implemented these 2 and achieved a state that we call scalability or scalable, you do not actually have a business that you can sell. You have to achieve scalability first. Once your business is scalable, we're then on this flat line and we need to do something about that. So we have a process called pay up, and I'll explain how that works later. And then implement an advisory board, M&A growth, and ultimately we achieve this high profit exit. So that is the typical profile of a business, either growth, flatline, and death spiral, or growth, flatline, and breakout. And we need to know where we are now on this curve to know what is the appropriate strategy that we should be implementing. So you've come on this webinar to understand how you can make more profit now, but the real value in your business is not in your day-to-day operating profit. The real value in your business is what you can sell at your business exit. And the business exit value can range anything from as little as 1 times annual profit to 30 times EBITDA, earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and even more than that. But the problem with going for the profit in the business exit is most people get this very badly wrong. The grim reality is that 85% of the net worth of a business owner rests in their business. Okay, it's a huge amount of value for the business owner, but over 98% of business exits are for zero or near zero value. And that's a tragedy. And the reason is because the business owner's great at operation, but they don't know how to prepare and sell their business. So some of the things that you should be thinking about is the SDE valuation. This is seller's discretionary earnings. This is what you would get for an owner-centric business. It's what your earnings and the other monies and the other value that you personally take out of the business. And at that point, you would get a multiplier, minimum 1 times annual profit, maximum 4.5. Typically 2 to 2.5 would be relevant. But that's only if you've achieved scalability. On the other side of the coin, if you go through the process of implementing professional management systems, you look at your value based on EBITDA, you can be achieving multipliers anywhere between 5 and 35 times of your EBITDA valuation. That's a huge difference, and that's what we need to be aiming for, okay? And the acid test as to whether your business is saleable is this. If you can afford to take 3 months away from your business, no email, no phone, no cell phone, and just let the business run, if it's still operating effectively when you return, you have something you can sell. If you don't, you're still what we call an owner-centric business, and it's extremely unlikely that you're going to be able to sell for any value or any real value at all. Now, let's just explain the difference. So as an SDE, with an SDE valuation, so the prerequisite here is that you have achieved scalability, but you haven't optimized the business. So let's say that you're an engineering company, you're doing $2 million a year and you're running at 15% profit. That would give you an SDE nominally of about $300,000, okay? Using the standard tables, we can see here that at $300,000, you would get a valuation, or you get a multiplier of about 3.0. So that means that your business would be valued at $900,000, okay? If you're thinking that that's going to fund the rest of your retirement, you're probably going to be badly disappointed at that time. So we need to look at what we can do to maximize and to get the absolute value out of the business that we can. Now, you're on this webinar because you want to know how to make profit in the short term. So, well, why, Dave, why are you talking about business valuations when I'm not even thinking about selling? The sale for me is 3 years, 5 years, 10 years away. I want profit now. And that's a perfectly valid question. But let me ask you this. Let's look at this house, for example. If you tried to sell that property now, you would get nothing for the house. All you would get is the value of the land, the asset value of the property, and you would get much less than you would deserve if that was a functioning and a properly maintained house. And most businesses are like this. The business is staying upright. The business is staying alive because of the owner, who is the center of everything. It's called the owner-centric business. They are keeping the marketing going. They're keeping the operations going. They're doing the firefighting. All of that is happening around the owner. The problem is, as soon as the owner leaves, the business grinds to a halt. So the buyer is going to say, well, there is no value in this business. When the owner has left, there is no value in this business. So why would I pay anything for it unless I'm just buying the asset base? So let me show you why we recommend you have a business exit strategy and how that can affect your day-to-day profits and your day-to-day operations. So we use what we call the 4 levels of business exit. Level exit is a run to failure. You have no plan to exit the business, and when you do leave, you're lucky to get your basic asset value. So fireside sale, you're getting near zero value. If you go to a level 1 business, this is where we've systematized our sales and operations. This is when we've achieved scalability. You have value in the business that you can sell. A good potential buyer would be a competitor, and it takes nominally 12 to 18 months to get to that scalability so that you can present credibility to the buyer so that you get some decent value. And this is where we're maybe looking at 5 times 5 times your annual profit. If we go for a level 2 exit, this is where you have had a strategy to prepare the business for exit, and you're working on the business and over the business. You are then looking for a higher value exit, and you should be able to get potentially 10x on the base valuation of the business. And then the level 3 is when you're really going for gold, and this is when you have an aggressive M&A process, and you're looking at really packaging your business to sell on to a private equity fund or a family office. But why is that important to you today in your operation? Well, if you're like me, when you came to sell a house, or you bought the house, you had a great list of things you wanted to do to make it your dream property, and then you'd live there for a few months, and then all of a sudden this thing called life comes along. You end up with kids, you end up with sports teams, you end up with work getting in the way, you end up with various other activities, and so all of those things that you always meant to do to make the house the dream home that you'd always wanted never get done. You then realize that you have to sell. You're either moving for the job, you are upsizing because of family, you're downsizing because of emptiness, whatever the reason is that you're going to sell, and you bring a realtor and say, hey, I want to sell, it's been my home for the last 5-10 years, whatever. The realtor comes in and says, great, lovely place, we can do a lot with this. Here's all the things you need to do so that I can stage your home to get you the maximum value. Get some landscaping done, replace the kitchen counters, upgrade the bathrooms, open plan the living areas. All these things that you knew initially that there were things you had to do, but you never got around to them. The realtor now says, you need to do these so that you can get maximum value. When you've done that, you then look at your home and say, wow, this is a lovely home. Why am I moving? In my case, I was actually emigrating to a different country, so I had no option. But when you've done all those things, the home that you're in becomes much more livable, much more attractive. And you say, well, why would I want to do this? The analogy carries across to your business. All those things that you meant to do, systematize your sales and marketing, implement business operating systems, maximize your cash flow, minimize your expenses, aggressively take out your non-conformance costs. All those things that will make the day-to-day operation and satisfaction and pleasure from running your business are all things that you have to do anyway to prepare for sale. So what we teach and what we recommend to business owners is go through the process of preparing to exit your business, even if you're not planning to exit your business, because once you've gone through those strategies, the business will be much more profitable for you. It will be much more enjoyable for you to be running in the business, and you are much better positioned to sell the business in your terms, not someone else's terms. And remember, for a level 2 exit, we're looking at potentially 2 or 3 years to really optimize. So if you go through this process, you're having the benefit of improved profit, improved revenue, reduced cost, better employee satisfaction, better customer satisfaction, a better managed team. So the business is in every way, shape and form much more enjoyable for you to own and operate, and you're already prepared. So if a sudden opportunity does come along, you can sell for high value rather than suddenly having to exit when you're not prepared for that dreaded zero value exit. So although we've been talking about business exit, everything that we recommend in the level 1 and level 2 strategy is stuff you should be doing now to maximize the operating profit of your business today.